Yeah.
There's a litany of events that have happened like that in Florida and around the United States. Just a few names. Rachel Morningstar Hoffman, 23-year-old student, sent out by the Tallahassee Police Department to work as an undercover informant. She just had a marijuana offense. She was in drug court. They sent her out to buy 2 or 3 grams of cocaine, several hundred ecstasy pills, and a gun from 2 violent criminals. They shot her, killed her. The city of Tallahassee is now being sued for about $25 million, and some parents don't have their daughter. Vincent Hodgkiss in Pembroke Pines, father killed by police storming in, no criminal record, just the police found some marijuana in his trash can and stormed into his house at 3 o'clock in the morning. Greg Laffon here in town, no criminal record, sentenced to 5 months in the county jail, beaten so severely by his jailers that he's now in a persistent vegetative state. He's certainly not very productive right now. Marijuana didn't make him that way. He wasn't in a persistent vegetative state when he went into jail. He certainly was when he came out. Mention of the lawsuits that have been filed against these cities are really irrelevant in light of the tragedies that have been visited upon these families.
Yeah, and thank you so much for that rundown. I mean, obviously we could take a whole broadcast documenting those type of things, and it is an unfortunate byproduct, unfortunate collateral of the war on drugs, of the war on marijuana, that we have those type of transgressions, both in terms of civil liberties and unfortunately in terms of carnage. I mean, in terms of real physical victims of this war on drugs, not only people whose employment prospects and kind of life history, if you will, has been altered by this, but people who are byproducts of the actual, physical violence of being shot, killed, things along those lines. There certainly does get to a point where the cure is worse than the ill, if you will, and we're going to get into that in just a minute. We have another overhead though that we're going to put up here, because I do think that it's important to, for the viewers out there in the audience to have some contextual things to think about here. Just in terms of marijuana, the 3rd most popular recreational drug in the USA. Quick pop quiz for you two here. Can you name those other 2 recreational drugs? Of course, that's alcohol and cigarettes, tobacco. Used by over 80 million citizens, 20 million reporting having smoked marijuana in the past year. 11 million classify themselves regular users. And certainly, we do feel that laws should reflect this reality, the fact that these things are widely used in society. And we've got another overhead we're going to go right to, Phil, because it gets into what you were talking to a little bit about. Just some law enforcement stats. More than 700,000 arrests last year just for marijuana, more than 5 million in a decade. And Ford, you were talking about the police resources that are used and expended on this type of thing. We know, just by definition, that police resources are limited, they are valuable, and the fact that we would be spending that type of energy and money on something like enforcing marijuana laws in this day and age is just absolutely ridiculous. Obviously, we've talked about the fact that this war on marijuana has destroyed the lives of citizens. We do have a situation where nearly half of the prisoners in federal prisons are incarcerated on nonviolent drug offenses. Now, those, of course, are just not marijuana offenses, but other drug offenses as well. It does get to the point where, as a society, we say, what is the cost of this? And can we actually afford to carry on with the way that we've been carrying on?
Yeah, if we think about this from the beginning, it doesn't make a lot of sense, because we worry about someone becoming a drug user of any type and worry that they're going to become lazy or violent, so we put them in jail where we lose any productivity that they had whatsoever. And they're probably going to become violent there, and we're going to place a crippling or very damaging criminal label on them. And I think, honestly, that was the idea, just as you were saying. If civil liberties are going to be violated by the police in this country, it's going to happen in the context of the war on drugs, and I think that was the idea from the beginning. In 1937, when the initial hearings were held on this, Harry Anslinger, the chief of the Federal Bureau of Narcotics, a bureaucratic genius, told the committee that he was before that this drug made white women seek out rendezvous with black men and several, and this was just to put this in context, these people didn't walk out. This was 1937. This was a very backward time by modern standards. Over time, the rationale has changed somewhat, but this was a way in which they could say these minorities, we think they're using these drugs. It's kind of like the conception of pre-crime. We can go ahead and we can arrest them even though they haven't done anything.
Yeah, I mean, and that's absolutely frightening. And I mean, again, you've raised so many important issues just in that that little talk that you had right there. any one of which could almost be a full show in itself, but there is absolutely no doubt that drug laws are racist in origin. I mean, the earliest drug laws were actually against opium use against Chinese immigrants in the 1800s. We know that drugs that are typically seen as black drugs carry much stiffer sentences than drugs that are seen as white drugs, and we know that a lot of times drug laws are applied very, very disproportionately. So there is a whole host of issues that goes along with the application of these drug laws. But the other thing that I think is a key and core issue, and Phil, I'm going to be interested in your commentary on this, for libertarians. You know, back in the noble experiment of alcohol prohibition, back in the early 1900s, there was at least enough respect for the federal Constitution to realize that to authorize the federal government to be involved in something like a war on alcohol, they needed to amend the Constitution to give the federal government those powers of enforcement and investigation and arrest. That debate never happened with the war on drugs. As you know, basically they formed the DEA and they started to jump on everybody's civil liberties without any constitutional review, without any of those concerns that happened when alcohol prohibition was being discussed. Furthermore, when there was debate after 9/11 with the Patriot Act and things along those lines, and there was an argument around the expansion of federal investigative powers, the rationale that was used was, well, these powers already exist for the war on drugs. We're just trying to expand them now to the war on terror. Now, a discussion about whether the Patriot Act and those kind of things is a good or a bad idea is a completely separate discussion. But the simple fact of the matter is, you want to talk about incrementalism, and we have a situation where the federal government expanded its powers dramatically under this guise of the war on drugs. It spawned all kinds of new federal law enforcement agencies, equipped with guns, a lot more federal agents in all these myriad of agencies. And now we have, you know, an intelligence system, if you will, and federal powers that have expanded dramatically. Phil, do you agree with that assessment, and is that a cause for concern for you?
It is. Basically, the war on drugs was created to circumvent the Constitution, and unfortunately it's worked. When I talk to people about issues, a lot of times I'll tell them, hi, I'm libertarian, and I want to tell you about libertarian. I've had people say, oh, you people want people to do drugs. No, I don't. In fact, if we got rid of drug laws, statistically, it's shown that less people would do drugs in general. Really, I just want to reestablish constitutional law here in America.
For those of you that are enjoying this dialogue that maybe want to learn a little bit more, there's a couple of things that you can do. First of all, you can continue to watch the Libertarian Perspective, which airs Wednesdays at 7 o'clock here at Comcast and is repeated at other various times throughout the Comcast broadcast schedule. So we appreciate you tuning in this time, and you can look for us as your channel surfing. The other thing that you can do is become involved locally. The Duval County Libertarian Group is very active and meets regularly. It actually meets the third Thursday of every month, beginning at around 6 o'clock at the Golden Corral Restaurant on Southside Boulevard, which is down across from the Tinseltown movie theater. Things kick off, what, around 6 o'clock, Phil? And
really 6:30, actually. Okay. Some people show up early to eat before things start, about 6:30. Okay.
So you can look for those meetings on the third Thursday of every month. The other thing you can do is check us out on the web. Website is www.jaxlp.org. You can also give a ring at 904-731-5656. We'll be happy to keep you updated with local events and make sure that you have some information to review. And Ford, in terms of folks that are interested in the Committee for Sensible Marijuana Policy, what steps would you recommend that they take if they would like to get involved with that?
Okay, you can join our Facebook group, Florida's Committee for Sensible Marijuana Policy, and also our email is csmpflorida@yahoo.com.